Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd be that guy posting here, but here we are. I'm Mike, 37, and my wife, Lisa, is 35. We've been married for 9 years, together for 12. No kids, just the two of us in a nice house with a golden retriever named Max. From the outside, people probably think we're the perfect suburban couple. Hell, I thought so too, until about a month ago. Lisa's always been a strong personality. I mean, she could argue the paint off a wall and still somehow convince you it was never painted to begin with. I loved her fire. It was part of what made her so magnetic. But lately, that fire feels different, colder, angrier, like it's pointed at me instead of lighting us both up. It started with little things. She began dressing up more, which I didn't mind at first. But the makeup got heavier, the skirt shorter. Just wanted to feel good about myself, she'd say when I noticed. Then there were the late nights. She claimed she was working overtime at her job as a graphic designer or meeting up with her friend Megan. I'm not a jealous guy, but something about it felt off. Her phone, once left casually on the kitchen counter, now seemed glued to her hand. If I even glanced at it, she'd snatch it up like it held state secrets. Last week, I asked her if everything was okay. "You've been distant lately," I said, trying to sound concerned, not accusatory. Her response? "God, Mike, not everything's about you. Can I just have a little space without you breathing down my neck?" It stung, but I let it go. I figured maybe she was stressed or going through something. I even started cooking dinner more often, doing extra chores, thinking I could ease her burden. She didn't seem to notice. Then came the red flag that finally tipped me over. I'll save that for part 2, because I'm still trying to process how I missed it for so long. Stay tuned, Reddit. It's about to get messy. All right, Reddit, buckle up. This is where things start to unravel. After weeks of suspicion gnawing at me, I decided I had to get to the bottom of it. Last Saturday, Lisa said she was meeting Megan for drinks downtown. Don't wait up. She tossed over her shoulder as she grabbed her purse and strutted out the door in a tight black dress. Max tilted his head at me, like even he knew something wasn't right. I waited about an hour before my gut won the fight with my brain. I wasn't proud of it, but I decided to check her location using the Find My feature on her phone. She had shared it with me years ago when we first got together, back when we trusted each other. She wasn't at the bar downtown. She was at a hotel on the other side of town. My stomach dropped. Maybe it was Megan's hotel? Maybe they'd had too many drinks and needed a safe place to crash? I clung to any explanation that didn't confirm what I was starting to fear. I drove to the hotel. My hands were shaking on the wheel, but I couldn't stop myself. I parked across the street and waited. About 40 minutes later, I saw her walking out with a guy I didn't recognize. Tall, dark-haired, well-dressed. He had his arm around her waist like it belonged there. They stopped in front of his car, and he kissed her. Not a quick peck on the cheek either. Full-on, passionate, like they were in some cheesy rom-com. She giggled, and then they got in his car and drove off. I sat there, stunned, until a car honking behind me jolted me back to reality. I followed them at a safe distance. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. They didn't go far, just to a diner a few blocks away. They went inside, laughing like a couple of high school sweethearts. I couldn't take it anymore. I drove home, half in a daze, not sure what I just witnessed. When Lisa came home around 2 a.m., smelling of cheap diner coffee and expensive cologne, I was waiting for her. "What's wrong with you?" she asked, her tone more annoyed than guilty. I stared at her for what felt like an eternity before saying, "Do you want to tell me who he is, or should I just start guessing?" Her face froze for a second, and then she laughed, an actual laugh. "Oh my God, Mike, are you serious? You're acting like a crazy person. Megan and I went for drinks, and you're sitting here concocting some affair fantasy? Get a grip." I wanted to believe her. I wanted her to give me a reason to believe her. But I knew what I saw. "Don't lie to me, Lisa. I followed you." The laughter stopped. Her expression hardened. "You what? Are you stalking me now?" "Jesus, Mike, I can't believe this. You're unbelievable." And just like that, she flipped the script. Suddenly, I was the bad guy, the controlling, paranoid husband who didn't trust her. I'll save what happened next for part 3, because, honestly, it's still hard to think about without my blood boiling. All right, Reddit, here's how the confrontation went down. Spoiler alert, it was ugly. After Lisa finished her Oscar-worthy performance of trying to flip everything on me, I wasn't having it. "You can drop the act, Lisa. I saw you with him. I saw you at the hotel. I saw you kiss him." Her eyes widened. just for a split second, but it was enough to confirm what I already knew. Still, she didn't back down. You're insane. You're probably seeing things or mistaking me for someone else. You've always been so paranoid, Mike. It's suffocating. I'm not paranoid, Lisa. I literally followed you to the hotel and then to the diner. Who's the guy? Just tell me the truth. And here's where she really leaned into the drama. She rolled her eyes, threw her purse on the couch, and crossed her arms. Phoenix, you want the truth? He's a co-worker. We're working on a big project together, and we were brainstorming. God forbid I have a life outside of this house without you stalking me like some kind of lunatic. A co-worker? I repeated, incredulous. And brainstorming requires a hotel room and making out in the parking lot. She huffed and tossed her hair. I don't have to explain myself to you. If you can't trust me, maybe this marriage isn't working. That hit me like a freight train. It was such a cold, calculated thing to say, like she was testing how much I'd let her get away with. Maybe it's not. I shot back, my voice shaking. For a moment, she looked genuinely surprised. I don't think she expected me to push back. She probably thought I'd beg her for forgiveness or pretend this wasn't happening. But then the tears started. Fake tears, mind you, but they came on strong. I can't believe you're accusing me of cheating after everything we've been through. Do you know how hard I work? Do you know how much I put up with? You're always so controlling, always so insecure. It's exhausting, Mike. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was trying to make this about my insecurities instead of her obvious betrayal. Lisa, stop. Just stop, I said, cutting her off. This isn't about me being insecure. It's about you sneaking around and lying to my face. I deserve better than this. The tears dried up almost immediately, replaced by pure venom. Better than this? Better than me? You think you're some catch, Mike? Let me tell you, I could do a hell of a lot better than you. But I stayed because I cared. And this is how you repay me? At that moment, I felt like I was staring at a stranger. The woman I'd married, the woman I thought I knew, was nowhere to be found. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my keys and left. I needed air, space, anything to keep me from losing it. I drove around aimlessly for hours, replaying her words in my head, wondering how we'd gotten here. When I finally went back home, she was asleep or pretending to be. I crashed on the couch, Max curled up on my feet, and I tried to figure out my next move. The next morning, I woke up with a stiff back and a sinking feeling in my chest. Lisa was already up, sipping coffee in the kitchen like nothing had happened. It was surreal, like she'd reset overnight, hoping I'd pretend last night was just a bad dream. I decided to confront her again, hoping this time she'd drop the act. Lisa, we need to talk. Do we? She said, not even looking up from her phone. Because I feel like you made your point pretty clear last night with your overreaction. Overreaction. That word almost made me laugh. I'm not overreacting, Lisa. I want the truth, and I'm not letting this go until I get it. Who's the guy? She finally looked at me, her expression icy. Mike, I told you. He's a co-worker. We were brainstorming. You're blowing this way out of proportion. You don't brainstorm in hotel rooms, Lisa. I snapped, my voice rising despite my attempt to stay calm. And you sure as hell don't kiss co-workers like that unless it's more than brainstorming. Her face twisted, and she fired back without missing a beat. Oh, so now you're an expert on how people work? Maybe if you spent half as much time focusing on this marriage as you do snooping around, I wouldn't need to look for attention elsewhere. That was it. She said the quiet part out loud, and there was no taking it back. So you admit it? You're looking for attention elsewhere. Her face went pale, but she doubled down. You know what, Mike? Fine. You want the truth? Yeah, I've been seeing someone, and you know why? Because I'm tired of feeling invisible in my own marriage. All you do is work, complain, and sit on that damn couch with Max. Meanwhile, I'm out here trying to keep things exciting, and you don't even notice. Her words hit like a sledgehammer. Part of me wanted to shout, but another part just felt hollow. So it's my fault? You cheat, and somehow it's my fault. She rolled her eyes. Don't be so dramatic. It's not like I'm in love with him. It's just sex, Mike. Sex that I haven't been getting here, by the way. I stood there, stunned, as she casually sipped her coffee like she hadn't just detonated a bomb in our marriage. I can't believe this, I muttered, shaking my head. After everything we've been through, this is where we end up? You sneaking around and then blaming me for it? Oh, grow up, Mike, she said, standing up and grabbing her purse. It's not like I'm the only one unhappy here. If you had a spine, maybe you'd admit it too. But go ahead, play the victim. It suits you. And with that, she walked out the door. I spent the rest of the day in a haze, alternating between anger and disbelief. I couldn't tell if I was more upset about the cheating or the way she twisted everything to make it my fault. When she came back that night, she acted like nothing had happened. But this time, I wasn't going to let her keep running the show. I knew I couldn't keep letting Lisa steamroll me, but I needed a plan. She was manipulative, sure, but I wasn't about to let her turn me into a passive bystander in my own life. I had to start thinking strategically. That night, while she sat on the couch scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened, I quietly grabbed my laptop and started researching divorce lawyers. If she wanted to act like she held all the cards, I was determined to remind her that she didn't. The first thing I did was lock down our finances. Lisa had access to all our accounts, and knowing her vindictive streak, I wasn't about to leave myself exposed. I moved most of the money into a separate account under my name and left just enough in our joint account to cover bills. Next, I set up consultations with 3 different lawyers. I didn't want to make any rash decisions, but I needed to know what my options were. I also started keeping a record of everything: her late-night outings, the lies, and the gaslighting. I wasn't sure how much of it would matter legally, but I wanted to be prepared. But the real turning point came 2 days later. Lisa came home late again, looking smug as ever, and I decided I wasn't going to play nice anymore. "Who was it this time?" I asked casually as she walked through the door. She froze for a moment before laughing. "God, Mike, are you still on this? Get over it already. You're embarrassing yourself." "I'm not embarrassed," I said calmly. "But you should be. I've spoken to a lawyer, Lisa. If you think I'm going to keep sitting here while you sleep around, you're wrong." Her smug expression faltered, and for the first time, she looked genuinely uneasy. "A lawyer? Seriously? You're really going to throw our marriage away over a couple of harmless mistakes?" "Mistakes?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Lisa, you're cheating. Repeatedly. You've lied to me, disrespected me, and made me question everything about our marriage. And now you're trying to downplay it as harmless." She dropped her purse on the floor and crossed her arms. "You think you're so righteous, don't you? Like you've been the perfect husband? Newsflash, Mike. You're boring. I needed excitement. And if you can't handle that, maybe you're the problem." I shook my head, fighting to stay calm. "If I'm so boring, why are you still here? Why not leave and go be with one of your exciting guys?" "Because I love you, you idiot," she shouted, tears suddenly welling in her eyes. "I know I've screwed up, but you don't just throw away 9 years of marriage over this." Her tears might have worked on me once, but not this time. "You threw it away the moment you decided someone else's bed was more important than our vows." "I'm done, Lisa. I've already started preparing for a divorce." She looked like I'd slapped her. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." She stormed out of the room, slamming the bedroom door behind her. I spent another night on the couch, wondering how we'd gotten to this point. The next morning, Lisa came out of the bedroom like a thunderstorm, her expression set to full rage mode. I braced myself as she stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee with more force than necessary. "So, you're really doing this? You're going to make a fool of both of us with a divorce?" she snapped, her tone dripping with venom. "No, Lisa, irraplia calmly. You already made a fool of us. I'm just cleaning up the mess." She slammed the coffee pot down, sending hot liquid splashing onto the counter. "You're unbelievable. Do you know how many people get over this? Affairs happen, Mike. People move on. But you're acting like a drama queen." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Wow, Lisa, affairs happen? That's your defense? You've been lying to my face for weeks, maybe months, and you think I'm the one being dramatic?" "I only lied because I knew you'd overreact like this," she shot back, crossing her arms. "If you weren't so controlling, maybe I could have been honest from the start." "Honest?" I echoed, shaking my head. "Lisa, you've done nothing but lie. Even now, you're still trying to spin this like I'm the bad guy. It's pathetic." That's when her tone shifted. She softened, her voice dropping into that manipulative, sugary tone she used whenever she wanted something. "Mike, come on. Think about it. We've built a life together. Do you really want to throw that all away? Over a little mistake?" "You keep calling it a mistake, Lisa, but it wasn't. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill or burning dinner. Cheating is a choice, and you made it over and over again." Her expression darkened. and I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was calculating her next move, deciding whether to play the victim or the aggressor. She chose both. "If you divorce me, you're going to regret it," she said, her voice cold. "You think you're going to come out of this unscathed? Think again. I'll take half of everything, Mike. Your money, the house, everything. And don't think for a second that Max is staying with you. He's my dog, too." I clench my fists, trying to keep my anger in check. "Take it all, Lisa. Take the house. Take the money. Take Max. None of it matters if I have to keep sharing it with someone who doesn't respect me." For a moment, she looked stunned. I don't think she expected me to call her bluff. But before she could respond, my phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at it and saw a notification from my bank, a large withdrawal from our joint account. "Are you kidding me?" I muttered, grabbing my phone. Lisa smirked, the smugness back in full force. "Oh, come on, Mike. You locked me out of most of the money. I needed a little spending cash. Consider it compensation for dealing with your tantrums." I didn't respond. Instead, I grabbed my laptop and logged into our bank account. Sure enough, she drained what little I'd left in there. "That's fine," I said, keeping my voice steady, "because I already moved the rest. Good luck paying your hotel bills without it." Her smirk vanished. "You son of a bitch." After the bank account stunt, things between Lisa and me went from tense to outright hostile. She spent the rest of the morning slamming doors and muttering under her breath, making it abundantly clear she wasn't going to back down. But I wasn't backing down either. That afternoon, I called my lawyer and started setting things in motion. I wanted this over as quickly and cleanly as possible. By the evening, Lisa had cooled off, or so I thought. She came into the living room where I was sitting with Max, her expression a mix of fake remorse and irritation. "Can we talk?" she asked, crossing her arms like she was doing me a favor by initiating the conversation. "Depends," I said. "Are you going to actually be honest? Or is this another round of you playing the victim?" Her eyes narrowed, but she quickly replaced the glare with a forced smile. "Fine, you want honesty? Here it is. I screwed up. I let things get out of hand, and I regret it. But we can fix this, Mike. We just need to reset." "Reset?" I repeated, incredulous. "Lisa, this isn't a video game. You don't get to hit reset and pretend nothing happened." She sighed dramatically, like I was the unreasonable one. "What do you want from me, Mike? I already said I'm sorry. Isn't that enough?" "No," I said flatly. "What I want is for you to stop lying and admit the truth. How long has this been going on? Is it just one guy, or are there more?" Her face hardened again, and I could see she was debating whether to double down or come clean. Finally, she threw up her hands. "Fine. You want the truth? There have been a few, but it didn't mean anything. It was just sex, Mike. That's it." I stared at her, trying to process what I'd just heard. "A few?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "How many is a few, Lisa? 2? 3? 10? She rolled her eyes like I was the one being ridiculous. "Does it matter? The point is, I always came back to you. That should count for something." I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow and humorless. "You always came back? Wow, Lisa, what an honor to be your backup plan." Her face twisted with anger. "You know what? Maybe I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere if you weren't so goddamn boring. All you do is work, watch TV, and walk the dog. Where's the excitement? Where's the passion?" "Passion?" I snapped, standing up. "Passion doesn't come from sneaking around and screwing strangers in hotel rooms. It comes from respect, Lisa, and you threw that out the window the moment you decided I wasn't enough for you." She stormed out of the room, muttering something about how I was impossible to deal with. I let her go, too drained to argue anymore. But the night wasn't over. Around midnight, I got a call from an unknown number. Curious and slightly paranoid, I answered. "Mike, it's Greg," the voice said. "Greg, one of Lisa's co-workers. The one she claimed was just a friend." "What do you want, Greg?" I asked, my tone sharp. "I thought you should know," he said, his voice hesitant. "Lisa's been talking about leaving you. She's been saying she's got a plan to make sure you come out of this with nothing. I didn't want to get involved, but I thought you should know." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Thanks for the heads up," I said before hanging up. Lisa didn't come home that night. When she walked in the next morning, looking smug and refreshed, I was ready for her. "Where were you last night?" I asked. She smirked. "Ow. Why? You need a full itinerary now." "No," I said calmly. But I do need you to know that I'm done playing games. You're not going to manipulate me, Lisa. Not anymore. Her smirk faltered, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. She knew I was serious, but she had no idea what I was planning. Lisa's smugness didn't last long. Over the next few days, I began quietly laying the groundwork to make sure she couldn't pull the rug out from under me. The call from Greg had been a wake-up call. I knew Lisa was manipulative, but hearing she was plotting to leave me with nothing took things to a whole new level. The first thing I did was gather evidence. I went through her phone records, yes, I know how that sounds, and found multiple calls to numbers I didn't recognize. With some digging, I linked them to a few of her brainstorming buddies, and not surprisingly, one of them was the guy from the hotel. Then I installed cameras in the common areas of the house. Nothing invasive, just enough to cover the living room, kitchen, and hallway. If she was going to try and twist this around on me, I wanted proof of her lies. Next, I had another meeting with my lawyer. I told her everything, the cheating, the manipulation, the threats. She advised me to document every interaction with Lisa going forward and to keep all communication as factual and emotionless as possible. Meanwhile, Lisa started acting even more erratic. She'd leave the house for hours without explanation, then come home and pick fights over the smallest things. One night, she accused me of deliberately putting the milk back on the wrong shelf in the fridge just to mess with her. "You're insane," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "No, Mike," she snapped. "You're the one losing it. Honestly, it's pathetic. You're sulking around like some wounded puppy while I'm trying to hold this marriage together." I couldn't help but laugh. Hold it together? Lisa, you're the one who blew it up in the first place. Don't act like you're doing me a favor by sticking around. That shut her up, but only for a moment. Then she hit me with a bombshell. "Well, maybe I wouldn't have to stick around if you'd just agree to my terms," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "Your terms?" I repeated, staring at her in disbelief. "You mean the ones where you get everything, and I get to walk away with nothing?" She shrugged, completely unapologetic. "It's only fair, Mike. I've put up with your boring ass for 9 years. I think I've earned a little compensation." That was it. That was the moment I knew there was no coming back from this. I didn't respond. I just walked out of the room, grabbed my phone, and called Greg. "Hey, Greg," I said when he picked up. "I think it's time you told me exactly what Lisa's been saying about her plan." Greg hesitated, but eventually spilled everything. Lisa had been bragging at work about how she was going to file for divorce first, claim I was emotionally abusive, and walk away with the house, the money, and even Max. "She said you'd never fight back because you're too soft," Greg said, sounding genuinely apologetic. "Thanks, Greg," I said, my voice tight. "I appreciate the heads up." The next morning, I put my plan into action. When Lisa came into the kitchen, still wearing her smug little smirk, I handed her a piece of paper. "What's this?" she asked, frowning. "Notice of separation," I said. "I'm moving out next week. I've already talked to my lawyer, and you'll be hearing from her soon." Her face twisted in fury. "You can't do this, Mike. You're just going to walk away? After everything we've built?" "I'm not walking away," I said, meeting her glare. "I'm walking toward a life where I don't have to deal with your lies and manipulation. Good luck trying to play the victim without me around." Her jaw dropped, and for the first time, she looked genuinely scared. After I handed Lisa the separation notice, I could see her world start to unravel. At first, she tried to act indifferent, as though my leaving didn't bother her. But it didn't take long for the cracks in her facade to show. For the next few days, she alternated between anger and desperation. One moment she'd be screaming at me about how I was ruining her life, and the next she'd be trying to sweet-talk me into staying. "You don't have to do this, Mike," she said one evening, leaning against the kitchen counter with a forced smile. "We can fix this. We've been through worse, haven't we?" I didn't even look up from my laptop. "Lisa, the only thing we've been through is your inability to keep your promises. I'm done." Her smile disappeared, replaced by that icy glare I'd come to know so well. "Fine, go ahead and leave. But don't think for a second that I'll let you walk away unscathed. You think you're the only one who can play dirty." I didn't respond. I'd already prepared for her to lash out, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of knowing she'd gotten under my skin. The next day, Lisa decided to escalate things. I came home from work to find her sitting on the couch with her phone in her hand, a triumphant look on her face. "What did you do?" I asked, already dreading the answer. She shrugged, feigning innocence. Oh, nothing. Just had a little chat with HR at your office. Told them I was worried about your erratic behavior lately. You know, for your safety. I felt the blood drain from my face. You call my job? I had to, Mike, she said, her tone dripping with fake concern. You've been so stressed out lately. I just wanted to make sure they were aware of the situation. It took every ounce of self-control I had not to lose it right then and there. Instead, I took a deep breath and walked into the other room. If Lisa thought she could sabotage me, she was about to learn how wrong she was. That night, I went through the evidence I'd gathered, texts, phone records, and even a few incriminating photos I'd pulled from her laptop when she wasn't paying attention. I wasn't planning to use them unless I absolutely had to, but now it looked like I might not have a choice. The next morning, I called my boss and explained everything. I told him about the separation, the cheating, and Lisa's attempt to undermine me at work. To my relief, he was understanding. Don't worry about it, Mike, he said. We've had spouses pull this kind of stunt before. As long as you stay focused on your work, you've got nothing to worry about. I thanked him and hung up, feeling a small sense of relief. At least I still had my job for now. When I got home that evening, Lisa was waiting for me, her arms crossed and her expression smug. Enjoy your last few days here, she said. Because once I file, this house is mine. I couldn't help but smile. Go ahead and file, Lisa. I'll be sure to bring all the evidence to court. Her smirk faltered, and for the first time, she looked genuinely nervous. What evidence? You'll see, I said, walking past her. Good luck, Lisa. You're going to need it. After my warning, Lisa's confidence began to crack. I could see it in the way her smug smirk slipped whenever she thought I wasn't looking. But she wasn't done trying to intimidate me, not by a long shot. The next morning, she marched into the kitchen as I was drinking coffee and slammed a stack of papers onto the counter. Here, she said, her voice cold. I talked to my lawyer. This is what I'm asking for in the divorce. You might want to sit down before you read it. I picked up the papers and skimmed through them. She wanted the house, half of my retirement savings and spousal support, on top of keeping everything she'd already drained from the joint account. I couldn't help but laugh. You're delusional if you think you're getting all of this. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You don't have a choice, Mike. I've got leverage. No judge is going to side with you when I tell them how controlling you've been. I stared at her, letting the silence stretch. Finally, I said, Lisa, you've underestimated me. I've got more evidence than you can imagine. Texts, phone records, pictures. You want to go to war? Fine, but don't expect to come out unscathed. Her bravado faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. You think you're so smart, don't you? We'll see how confident you are when we're in court. The next week was chaos. Lisa started telling her friends, and even some of my family, that I was mentally unstable and emotionally abusive. It was a classic smear campaign, and it would have been devastating if I hadn't been prepared. I spent hours combing through her phone records and screenshots, building a timeline of her infidelity and lies. I compiled everything into a neat folder for my lawyer, who assured me we were in a strong position. Meanwhile, Lisa's antics were starting to catch up with her. One of her coworkers, not Greg, but another guy I didn't know well, reached out to me through Facebook. Hey Mike, his message read, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for what you're going through. A lot of us at the office know what's been happening, and honestly, it's embarrassing to watch her brag about it. If you need anything for the case, let me know. I was floored. Lisa had been so brazen about her behavior that even her coworkers were turning against her. Later that night, I confronted her again. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through Instagram like she didn't have a care in the world. Lisa, I said, standing in the doorway, how's that smear campaign working out for you? She looked up, her eyes narrowing. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about, I said, stepping closer. Your lies are catching up with you. People are starting to see you for who you really are. She rolled her eyes. Oh, please. Who cares what people think? You're just mad because you're losing. Am I? I asked, holding up my phone, because it looks like even your coworkers are siding with me. Her face paled, and for the first time, she didn't have a snappy comeback. You're out of moves, Lisa, I said, my voice steady. You can keep playing this game, or you can stop now and salvage what little dignity you have left. The choice is yours. The day of the first court hearing arrived faster than I expected. I walked in feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. My lawyer, Christine, had prepped me well. Stay calm, Stick to the facts and let her bury herself if she tries to spin her lies, she had advised. Lisa, on the other hand, came in looking like she was auditioning for a daytime drama. She wore a sleek black dress, her makeup just a little too perfect, and her expression a mix of faux sorrow and defiance. I could tell she thought she was about to put on the performance of a lifetime. When the judge entered, the room fell silent. Lisa's lawyer began by painting me as a controlling, emotionally abusive husband. Mr. Reynolds has a history of monitoring Mrs. Reynolds' movements, invading her privacy, and creating an environment of fear, he said with a straight face. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Invading her privacy? The woman who had spent months sneaking around with multiple men was now accusing me of being controlling? When it was my lawyer's turn, Christine didn't waste any time. She calmly presented the evidence I'd gathered: texts, phone records, and even photos from Lisa's own cloud storage. The judge's expression darkened as Christine laid out the timeline of Lisa's infidelity. This evidence clearly contradicts the narrative Mrs. Reynolds is trying to establish, Christine said. It also demonstrates a pattern of deceit and manipulation that Mr. Reynolds had to endure. Lisa's face turned beet red. She tried to interrupt, but the judge silenced her with a raised hand. "You'll have your chance to respond, Mrs. Reynolds," he said sternly. When Lisa finally got to speak, she went full drama queen. "Your Honor, I admit I made mistakes," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. But Mike wasn't the saint he's pretending to be. He was distant, cold, and more interested in his job than our marriage. I was lonely. Christine didn't let her off the hook. Loneliness does not justify months of infidelity or draining the couple's joint account without consultation. Furthermore, Mrs. Reynolds actively plotted to mislead the court, as evidenced by this correspondence. She handed over emails and texts from Lisa to her friends and co-workers, bragging about her plan to take everything from me. Lisa's composure cracked. "That's out of context," she shouted, her voice shrill. The judge leaned forward, his tone icy. "Mrs. Reynolds, I suggest you choose your words carefully. This is not a reality show. This is a court of law." For the rest of the hearing, Lisa barely spoke. By the end, the judge ordered her to return the money she'd taken from the joint account and temporarily granted me exclusive use of the house while the proceedings continued. When we left the courtroom, Lisa's fury was palpable. "You think you've won?" she hissed as we passed each other in the hallway. "This isn't over." "You're right," I said calmly. "It's just the beginning." After the courtroom fiasco, Lisa's composure unraveled faster than I thought possible. She'd always been good at keeping up appearances, but now her desperation was leaking out for everyone to see. The day after the hearing, she started showing up at the house unannounced, pounding on the door and demanding to be let in. "This is my house too, Mike," she screamed through the door one night. "You can't just lock me out." I didn't bother responding. The court order was clear. I had exclusive use of the house, and she wasn't allowed on the property without prior permission. When she realized she couldn't bully her way in, she switched tactics. I started getting texts and voicemails at all hours of the day. Text 1, "Mike, I'm sorry. Can we talk? I think we can work this out." Voicemail, "You're being so cruel, Mike. I don't deserve this. You're destroying everything we built." Text 2, "Fine, be a coward. Just remember, I have plenty of ways to make your life miserable." It was exhausting, but I refused to engage. Christine had warned me that responding to her outbursts would only give her ammunition. "Keep your interactions professional and document everything," she said. Then came the social media blitz. Lisa started posting vague but pointed statuses about how she was the victim of a cold, controlling husband who never appreciated her sacrifices. She even shared old pictures of us with captions like, "Remember when love was enough?" It didn't take long for mutual friends to start reaching out. "Hey Mike, what's going on with you and Lisa? She's been posting some concerning stuff? Man, Lisa's making you look like the bad guy here. You okay? Are you really divorcing her because she went out with a coworker?" That's what she's telling people. I stuck to my script. "It's a private matter. Thanks for checking in, but I'm not discussing it." But the breaking point came when Lisa showed up at my job. I was in the middle of a meeting when the receptionist called to say there was a woman in distress in the lobby, demanding to see me. I excused myself and walked out to find Lisa putting on the performance of a lifetime. She was sitting in a chair, tears streaming down her face, telling the receptionist and anyone within earshot that I was ruining her life and trying to turn everyone against her. "Lisa, you need to leave," I said firmly, keeping my voice low to avoid causing a scene. She stood up and marched over to me, pointing a finger in my face. "You think you can just throw me away like trash? After everything I've done for you?" "Lisa, this is my workplace," I said, my patience wearing thin. "If you don't leave, I'll have to call security." Her face twisted with rage. "Go ahead, Mike. Call security. Let's see how your precious coworkers feel about you after they hear what kind of monster you really are." I turned and walked back to my office, leaving her to stew in her own theatrics. Within minutes, security arrived and escorted her out. When I got home that evening, I found a handwritten note shoved under the door. "You can try to ignore me, but I'll always find a way. You're not as smart as you think you are. Lisa." I saved the note and sent a picture of it to Christine. "This is harassment," she said. "We can file a restraining order if this keeps up." After Lisa's stunt at my workplace, I thought things couldn't get any worse. But Lisa, being the master of chaos, proved me wrong. It started a few days later when I got a call from the police. "Mr. Reynolds, we received a report from your wife claiming that you've been threatening her safety. We need you to come in for questioning." I was floored. Threatening her safety? I hadn't so much as raised my voice at her, let alone done anything threatening. I called Christine immediately. "She's escalating," Christine said, her tone calm but serious. "This is a common tactic when someone knows they're losing control. Don't panic. Just tell the truth and stick to the facts." At the station, I explained everything. I handed over the note Lisa had left under my door and showed them texts and voicemails where she'd threatened to make my life miserable. The officer taking my statement nodded thoughtfully and said, "It sounds like this is part of a larger pattern. We'll file this under suspicion of false reporting for now." Lisa must have realized her false accusation wasn't going to stick because her next move was even more brazen. That evening, I got a call from Greg. "Mike, you need to hear this," he said. "Lisa's been going around the office telling people you're abusive. She even showed them pictures of bruises and claimed they were from you." "What?" I practically shouted. "That's a lie. I've never laid a hand on her." "I know," Greg said. "That's why I'm telling you." I overheard her bragging to someone about how easy it is to fake bruises with makeup. "A few of us are willing to back you up if this goes to court." I was equal parts furious and sick to my stomach. Lisa was no longer just lying to save face. She was actively trying to destroy my reputation. The next day, I filed for a restraining order. Christine helped me present the texts, voicemails, and Greg's testimony as evidence of Lisa's harassment and false claims. The judge granted a temporary order, barring her from contacting me or coming near my home or workplace. When Lisa was served with the papers, she went nuclear. She called me from a block number, screaming and crying about how I was turning everyone against her. "You're going to regret this, Mike," she shrieked. "I'll make sure you pay for what you've done." "Goodbye, Lisa," I said calmly before hanging up. But Lisa wasn't done yet. That night, I woke up to the sound of loud banging on my front door. I grabbed my phone and called the police, explaining that my estranged wife, who was now legally barred from coming near the house, was trying to force her way in. When the cops arrived, Lisa put on her best damsel in distress act. "He locked me out of my own home," she wailed, tears streaming down her face. "Ma'am, there's a court order in place," one of the officers said. "You're not allowed to be here." "This is M.Y. House," she screamed. "He's the one who's violating my rights." The officers weren't buying it. After reviewing the court documents I provided, they escorted Lisa off the property. I thought that would be the end of it, but Lisa managed to slip one last shot in as she left. "You think you've won, Mike?" she shouted from the police car. "This isn't over." After Lisa's midnight tantrum and the police intervention, I thought I'd finally get a moment of peace. But with Lisa, peace was never an option. The restraining order kept her physically away, but she wasn't done trying to undermine me. A few days later, I got a call from Christine. "Mike, there's been a development. Lisa's lawyer reached out about a possible settlement." A settlement? I wasn't holding my breath. I knew Lisa wasn't the type to back down unless she had no other choice. Christine and I went over her proposed terms, which were laughably one-sided. She still wanted spousal support, the house, and a chunk of my retirement. But the kicker? She wanted me to issue a public apology for abandoning her. "She's delusional," I told Christine. There's no way I'm agreeing to this. Christine agreed, and we countered with a much more reasonable proposal. No spousal support, a 50-50 division of assets, and an apology from her for the harassment and false accusations. As expected, Lisa exploded. She sent me an angry email accusing me of being vindictive and petty. I forwarded it to Christine without responding. But the real turning point came at the next court hearing. Lisa's lawyer must have known they were in trouble because he looked visibly tense as he presented her case. Lisa, however, was her usual arrogant self, smirking like she had already won. Christine was calm and methodical as she laid out our evidence: the texts, voicemails, Greg's testimony, and the fake bruises. The judge didn't look impressed with Lisa's antics. When it was Lisa's turn to speak, she launched into a melodramatic monologue about how I had emotionally abandoned her and forced her into the arms of other men. It wasn't about betrayal, she said, dabbing at fake tears. It was about survival. I needed someone to make me feel seen. Christine didn't even flinch. She presented timestamps from Lisa's texts and phone calls, showing how she'd been lying about her whereabouts and plotting to sabotage me. Then came the final blow, a recording of Lisa admitting to a coworker that she'd faked the bruises to make me look bad. Lisa's face went pale as the recording played. The courtroom was dead silent except for the sound of her own voice, bragging about how easy it was to play the victim. When the judge finally spoke, his tone was ice cold. "Mrs. Reynolds, your behavior has been reprehensible. You've demonstrated a blatant disregard for the truth and the legal process. This court will not reward such dishonesty." The final ruling was a massive win for me. I got to keep the house, the majority of my savings, and custody of Max. Lisa was ordered to pay back the money she had taken and cover my legal fees. When the ruling was read, Lisa's smirk was completely gone. She looked stunned, as though she couldn't believe her manipulation hadn't worked. Afterward, she tried to approach me outside the courtroom. "Mike," she said, her voice trembling. "Can we talk? Please, I just want to explain." I didn't even look at her. "We're done, Lisa. Don't contact me again." Well, Reddit, it's over. The divorce is finalized, the dust has settled, and Lisa is officially out of my life. For the first time in months, I feel like I can finally breathe again. After the court ruling, Lisa tried reaching out a few more times. First, there were the tearful texts about how much she missed us and how she was willing to change. When that didn't work, she shifted to anger, accusing me of ruining her life and warning me I'd regret letting her go. I ignored every message. Christine had advised me to maintain a strict no-contact policy, and honestly, it wasn't hard. By the time everything was said and done, I didn't have any anger left, just relief that it was over. Moving out of the marriage was easier than I expected. The house feels like mine again, not a battlefield. I even redecorated, getting rid of the furniture Lisa picked out, and making the place feel like home for me and Max. Speaking of Max, he's been my rock through all of this. Dogs really do know when you're hurting, and he's been by my side every step of the way. I've started going to therapy, which I'll admit I was hesitant about at first. But it's been helpful to unpack everything and figure out how I let things get so far. Turns out, loving someone doesn't mean ignoring the red flags, and there were plenty of them with Lisa. I just didn't want to see them. The hardest part has been rebuilding trust in myself. Lisa had a way of making me doubt my instincts, and it's going to take time to undo that damage. But I'm getting there one day at a time. As for Lisa, from what I've heard, she's still spinning her version of the story to anyone who'll listen. Last I checked, she was couch surfing with a friend after losing her apartment. Part of me feels sorry for her, but mostly I feel nothing. So, what have I learned from all of this? Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Document everything. It's not paranoid if it protects you. Know your worth. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're not enough, especially not someone who can't keep their promises. Don't be afraid to walk away. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is let go of someone who doesn't deserve you. If you're reading this and you're in a similar situation, know that it gets better. It's hard, messy, and painful, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm looking forward to what's next. Maybe I'll start dating again someday. But for now, I'm content with rediscovering who I am outside of Lisa's shadow. Thanks for sticking with me, Reddit. Your support has meant more than you'll ever know. Here's to new beginnings. Mike.